Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Digital EDU Dialogues podcast, where we talk about what's trending in higher ed. I am Angela Britcher from the BAB Group, and joining me today are Dr. George King and Mason. Welcome, George.
Welcome, Angela. Thank you very much. Thanks for having both of us. Was not quite planned this way, but thank you for having both of us on your podcast.
Well, I think it's great because what we're going to talk about today is how you have gone through career transitions from law enforcement and college professor to full-time adjunct, as well as being full-time grandparent, and how we as adults have to juggle all of these things and how we help facilitate some of these things for our students. So I think it's fabulous that Mason's going to join us for a little while today. So let's get started, George, by talking about your career, because for so many people that come to the BAB Group and come to professor services, you are career goals, right? Like you are the goal. People start how you did and then transition into full-time faculty. So if you could tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you got started and then how you transitioned into teaching.
Sure, thanks. I was a little bit older when I got into law enforcement. I joined the sheriff's office when I was 37 years old. I had a couple other jobs that just didn't become careers. So I was very happy with the sheriff's office. And then after I was with the sheriff's office about 5 years, I decided I really wanted to get promoted. And the best way to get promoted, of course, you needed some college education. So I had an associate's degree when I joined the sheriff's office. And I went to it was a private school that had a satellite campus near where we lived. So I used to go one night a week and one Saturday a month. And every month we would do one class. And as a law enforcement officer, to make extra money, many people know we go out and work details, which it's just putting on the uniform again and the gun belt and the vest and all of that. So I was going to college and I thought, these professors, they do pretty well. They come in one night a week, one Saturday a month, and they make pretty good money. And I wouldn't have to do it in uniform or anything. And then as the courses went on, I didn't really know this in the beginning, but I learned that I had to take some online courses. Now, this is back in the early 2000s, and it's just emerging online classes. And I didn't realize that, but I had to take a few. And then it was like I took my first online class, and I think it was like God hit me with a magic wand and said, ding, this is for you. And I realized that I could teach online in the comfort of my home if I got a master's degree. And of course, you need a master's in the discipline you're teaching. So as soon as I finished my bachelor's, I went and took my GREs. I enrolled in UCF. I was accepted, and I was totally online, and I loved online learning. Prior to that, though, I was teaching in the Law Enforcement and Corrections Academy at the local community college. And so I kind of established a little bit of a rapport with the department chair. So when I finished my master's at UCF, I said to my department chair, I said, I'd really like to teach online. It was a niche I wanted to get into because I loved online learning. I think it's great for a working adult who's juggling a job and family and a house and everything else we have to do and kids' schedules and everything. So I graduated in May. In August, I got my first class online and at Indian River State College in Florida, and away we went. So I told my wife, I'm done with school. That was enough. 2 years of bachelor's, 2 years of master's, I'm done. She goes, now you'll go back. And sure enough, she was right, as she always is. So 2 years later, I enrolled in my PhD program. It took me 7 years to get my PhD, but I got my PhD in 2015. Was the only person at the sheriff's office with a PhD. So I was pretty proud of that. And I did get promoted to sergeant too.
So you did all of this while working in local law enforcement. You did a bachelor's program, a master's program, and a PhD program, and you're getting promoted and managing your family.
I did. And this is something I work on with students because I think students, one of the biggest skills that they don't have or maybe lack or haven't refined is time management. We all know time management, even for older adults, as many people I know that are they don't manage time well. I have a lot of faults, mind you, but time management I'm pretty good at. I've always been anal retentive about time. I'm never late. almost 25 years sheriff's office. I was never late. But the point is that if you can manage your time, you can get stuff done and still balance everything. I find a quick tip that I give my students is every Sunday, make a list of the things you have to do this week, and then start transporting them to the calendar. Now, there's two tricks. One is I always put them in a day or two before they're due. So if I have an assignment due Thursday, I want it on Tuesday. And then the biggest trick is you can't go to bed without finishing your list for that day because you don't want anything to snowball. I think that if you wait till the last minute, and a lot of students do, and I see it time and time again, they don't do their best work and they add extra stress. If you get done early, and then life gets in the way, you're good. So
yes, then you got a little space. I know I always tell students, like, reach out to me early in the week. The assignment's due Sunday and you message me on Sunday afternoon and I'm in the middle of a softball game. Yeah, you're not going to get the response you need in time. I want to mention something you and I had talked about before. You had mentioned Lombardi time. I come from a family of Packer fans. You are a Packer fan. Tell us about Lombardi time and what that means to you and how that can apply to students.
I am a Packer fan and I'm a stockholder too. So Vince Lombardi was a very famous head coach for the Green Bay Packers back in the 1960s, won the first 2 Super Bowls. But Vince Lombardi, he was probably worse about time or more anal retentive about time than I am. And that's hard to believe. It's funny, my wife and I have had more fights about time over the course of our 39 years of marriage than anything else. But anyway, Vince Lombardi said, if you are on time, you're 15 minutes late. So if anybody goes to Lambeau Field, and I've been there 4 times, there's a clock outside the stadium that runs 15 minutes fast. So I am a firm believer in being someplace early. I would rather be an hour early than a minute late. So my wife has gotten better over the years, though. We fight much less about it.
I can appreciate that. My mom keeps the clock 15 minutes early as well, and I can't wait to discuss Lombardi time with her, the Packer fan. So George, if we could transition a moment, and I want you to talk a little bit about your experience of transitioning from teaching, because you started out teaching a course here, a course there, and then building up into more courses, and then transitioning into doing this, being a full-time adjunct. If you could talk about that part of your career journey.
Well, like I said, I got my start at Indian River State College, where I had gotten a rapport with my department chair, and I was only getting like 1 course a semester, and then it moved to 2, and then it's funny. I applied to the University of Phoenix to be an adjunct because I was also doing a little part-time job at the college at night. I was a night coordinator, and I knew that was coming to an end when they were changing buildings. So I applied to the University of Phoenix, and I got rejected. So then I contacted the BAB group. And I realized that my CV was lacking. Or then it was just a resume. It wasn't a CV yet. And so the BAB group wrote me a professional resume. And I reapplied just a few months later, 3 or 4 months later, University of Phoenix, and I got hired. So that's something I share, that it's really important to let the people who know what they're doing do it. And you can put your best foot forward that way. So that was important. So anyway, there I was with 2 colleges. And then I was starting to get towards the end of my career, and I also had aspirations to buy a bigger boat. So I started searching around more, and BAB Group has another service where they send out job leads. So I was applying to quite a few colleges, and then I got hired by Concordia University of Chicago. And that was really where I really started stepping up. I was getting 1 or 2 classes a semester from them. Plus I was getting quite a few courses from Phoenix and still IRSC. So I was building up. So I would get up every morning at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. I would do my schoolwork before I went to work. And because I really didn't want to come home at 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night from the courthouse and start to do schoolwork then. I also felt it was important to get online in the morning and read any emails from students so I could respond instead of waiting all day. That's something else that is a hallmark of my teaching. Everybody has students have different learning styles, and we have different teaching styles. I'm really big on communication. All my students get my 1 cell phone, same one my wife calls. You can call me if you want, as long as you're respectful of time and I answer. You can text me, you can email me. So, but anyway, there was 3 colleges, and then so right now I am currently teaching for 6 different colleges. And when I got to work for Walden, I am also doing dissertation work. So right now I'm chair on 5 committees, and I am second member on 9 more. So I have 14 dissertation students, and I had 10 classes. Now the semester's coming to an end right now. So I think I'm down to 2 because Walden doesn't take a winter break. So, but everything else is kind of wrapped up. I have a 2-week break, but definitely when I was moving to Tennessee and I knew I wanted to be a full-time adjunct, I again, not only did I use the BAB group for the job leads, but I also, because I was pretty busy, new house, everything, I paid, I think it was right around $300 a month or something like that. And not only did they send me job leads, but they filled out up to 32 or 35 applications a month. So then I got 3 more colleges within a year. So that was when I went from 3 to 6. And then I was actually employed by 1 more. And although I'm not currently teaching, I designed 2 courses for them, and they're in the transition of being absorbed by another school. But I'm always looking for more opportunities. But it really, and something important for adjuncts is that, like, I know in January, I don't have any college courses at least 2 of those 6 schools. So sometimes you'll have a lot, sometimes not so many. And so don't be afraid to take on a little more than you think you can handle, because a lot of times, like last summer, I was down to 3 or 4 courses was all I was teaching. It was like, hey, where did all the courses go?
Yeah, that ebb and flow of our academic calendar and enrollment. And yeah, and I think you brought up some great points, George, about that idea of a resume versus a CV, that when you apply with a resume, it's very different than when you apply with a CV, and that academic institutions are looking for that CV. I know the BAB group did my CV as well, which landed me my first teaching gig, and I'm so grateful because I didn't know the difference either. And what a wonderful service that is, as well as the idea that they do apply to jobs for us. All right, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, George, I want to talk more about how you work with students. You've been teaching online for so long. You've been teaching so much. You've got this robust experience of working with online students, and want to hear more from you about what is working. So we'll be back in 30 seconds.
Today's episode is brought to you by Professor Services. Looking for a job in teaching? Need to expand your network? Want to boost your income? Whatever it is, the expert team at Professor Services has you covered. From helping higher ed faculty find new jobs, to essential tools such as cover letters and CVs, to applying to jobs for you, Professor Services equips you to nail your job search. Don't stress over the job hunt. Maximize your potential and crush your next opportunity with support from our team of experienced administrators, mentors, and educators. Discover how the team at Professor Services can help. Visit professorservices.com today to get started and kickstart your career in higher education.
I am Angela Britcher, and I'm back with George King and Mason, our assistant today. And George, your expertise is online learning, and we are always getting questions from faculty who are transitioning from face-to-face to online, or who want to make that transition. What are some of the techniques that you use that really keep your students engaged in the classroom and that keep you connected with them?
Thanks, Angela. Great question. Again, I think, well, first off, you have to be you. When I teach, I really do look at evaluations from students. I look at evaluations from my supervisors, department chairs and stuff. I don't want to be the best Angela Britcher or someone else. I want to be the best George King I can be. As I mentioned, I think that communication is really important. So I want to be reachable to my students. To me, that's very important. And I can tell you that almost every semester when I get my evaluations, it says that he responds quickly. I respond within 24 hours to students. If they're texting me, they're getting something even quicker. Another thing for me is that I believe in discussions. Now, not every course I teach has discussions, but my practice is, and sometimes it can make for some long days, is I respond to every student's post if they post on time. So if a week starts on Monday and you're supposed to have by Thursday night or your initial discussion post, if they respond by Thursday night, I respond to every one of them. And if I have 15, 25 students in a class, that can be a lot of posts. And this semester I was teaching 10 courses. That could be days where I could be doing 50, 60 posts in a day. But the students really appreciate it. And that's something else they put on my evaluations, that they don't have other professors that are active in the discussion posts. I think that discussions are a hallmark to online learning, especially undergraduate. You kind of lessen up some in graduate work. Some graduate classes don't have discussions, some do. But that's a hallmark. Another thing that I do is I'm big on, all colleges have rubrics for grading. I used to teach at the University of Phoenix a while ago, and they had a great rubric, and I kind of borrowed some of it, at least the ideas for it. So I've created my own rubric, and that I adapt to all different assignments. So every week I'm changing it around so that the rubric. So when I'm doing, it helps me not miss something while I'm grading. So I think it gives detailed feedback. It allows me to go through and make sure I didn't fix anything without writing. Some people will see a long paragraph and they don't even really concentrate on it, but yet the rubric seems to break things up into categories for grading. It also helps me grade a little bit quicker, so I can get through the work that I need to get done. And probably the last thing is, I made myself, when I was going for my bachelor's and master's and even my PhD, we all know, and we've probably experienced, that professors can take some time to get back to students. If you're a student and you're waiting, so let's say you have a assignment due on a Sunday and then an assignment due next Sunday. Well, and most universities are allowing you to have 5-6 days past when the assignment was due for grading to be done, right? Well, if you're not getting feedback back until Friday and your assignment's due on Sunday, how are you going to implement that feedback? So I made myself a promise when I first started teaching back in 2006 online that I was not going to do that. And I've kept my word. If an assignment is due on Sunday, it's graded on Monday. If it's due on Tuesday, it's graded on Wednesday. And I have kept that promise for the 17 years I've been teaching online. I think it's important to the students, and especially in an online environment where they don't have that face-to-face communication. So I do believe in promptness, both in communication and grading. And I think one more thing we talked about, wait a second, I'm just forgetting it. So I've taken some classes to improve my craft. And one thing that I learned that seems to be being fairly successful is every week I would do a weekend wrap up. So for instance, we're going into week 3. I did a week 2 wrap up, week 3 preview. And I would write about a page of what we did, how this went, this is what's coming up, this is what I'm looking for. But now what I'm trying to do is, and it takes a little bit more time, but I'm trying to do videos. And so the students can log on, instead of reading a page of stuff, they can see me. And it's, I think it just gives a more personal approach than that piece of paper, that Word document up on the screen. And the students have commented that they appreciate the video. And really, it only takes me about, I don't know, 3-4 minutes to do a video, but that little video seems to, the students seem to appreciate it. And I think it was a good tip that I picked up on those ACU classes.
I agree. I find that students really appreciate those videos. And I was in an online teacher certification program where they emphasize not only that we do those kinds of videos, but that we, like you said, be ourselves. Like, it's an opportunity to dress down a little bit more than I might if I'm making intro videos that are going to live in this classroom for 3 years. I just made one the other day that was it's the final week of class. And I was doing it on Monday morning. So I was proudly in my Ravens shirt, right? And my students know that I'm a fan, and I've got students that are all different kinds of sports fans in that class, and we've kind of bonded over it. So I know that they appreciate that I'm coming to them like a real person on a Monday morning who's, showing my team colors. And it just, I think, makes us more approachable and real. And then I think students are much more likely to reach out for help. Right? They see and hear a real person who cares about things that they care about on the other side. And then they are, I think they feel a little more comfortable when they need help to reach out, especially in that virtual environment where it takes an effort to reach out, since they can't just talk to us in class.
You made a great point. A lot of times I'll be recording them a little early, and I talk about some of the things that I did through the week. Like, you should have seen all my videos around July this year were all about Mason, but, and having my first grandchild. But Yeah, I'll tell teams, go pack, go root for the Packers. Or I talk about, well, right now I'm baking Christmas cookies. So we just put up our Christmas tree. I tell them some personal stuff. I think it makes us more relatable, and they understand that we're juggling some of the things that they're juggling. Let's face it. I'm logging in, I'm grading, I'm doing discussions, I'm creating videos, I'm doing this stuff. Well, I have to juggle my time the same way they do with work and family and kids' ball games and ballet recitals and everything else that they do. Life gets in the way, folks. So, but you can do it all. And I think it makes us more human as we go.
I agree. It does. And that was one of the things I wanted to touch on that you and I had talked about before, because literally like minutes before you and I met, I was looking up late policies and looking up different kinds of policies that different schools had, as well as the schools where I teach. And I was really interested in what you had to say about your late policies and how you manage that in your classrooms, really thinking about all that our students are juggling, especially our non-traditional students. So if you could talk more about how you handle late work in your classrooms.
My teaching has evolved quite a bit in 17 years. There was things when I first started, I was always the type of student who handed in their work on time. I did blah, 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 blah. And I started teaching that way. And to be honest, I wasn't getting the best reviews, and I've evolved. And life certainly does get in the way, and everybody doesn't look at time the same way I do. When I was teaching for a school, they had a late policy that applied to some and not to others. I didn't think that was quite fair. I understand that people need accommodations, and I'm all about accommodations. I have a son with Down syndrome, so I think reasonable accommodations are fair. However, life gets in the way for both types of people, whether they need accommodations or not. And I didn't think it was fair. The university wanted me to take off 10% a day for up to 3 days and then not accept the assignment anymore. And where other ones, you could be a week late, 2 weeks late, and there was no point assessment. So to be honest with you, it's been at least 10 years. In the last 10 years at all 6 schools I teach for, I have never assessed a late point for an assignment. Now, discussions are different. I mean, let's face it, when the week is over, nobody's looking at discussions. So therefore, if you are posting, it's a one-sided statement instead of a discussion. So I don't allow people to earn points unless they contact me for something substantial, and then I'll make accommodations. But my general rule is discussions, nothing. But assignments, if they're done by the end of the class, I don't take off late points. I just don't. And some people will say that's, you have to put parameters around students to guide them for the workplace. And that's true, but that's what I do anyway.
I really took that to heart when you and I had this discussion, because I know when I hear from my students how much they appreciate that, especially when I've got working adults with families. But even when I teach more traditional age students, we think of like 18 to 22, they've got a job on top of being a full-time student. They may have an activity on top of that job and on top of being a full-time student. They're playing a sport, they're in a musical activity, they've got something with art, they've got something. And I've noticed how much they appreciate. I'll get an email from a student that's, I have this part done. This will be so much better if I could turn it in Monday morning instead of Sunday night. I'm like, of course. Or even just feedback that I get from students that, just knowing that they could do their best work if they have a little more time than trying to ram it all in under the deadline. So I've definitely experienced that as well.
That's a great point. Another thing about my personal late policies, I don't publicize it. I don't tell students, take your time. Whenever it comes in, I'm not going to take off late points. What I will do is respond to emails. Professor, can I have a little extra time? I'll have it in for Friday at the latest. Yeah, no problem. And I won't charge the late points this time.
Yeah.
I don't publicize it. So I'm not trying to advocate for people to be late. However, I'm not going to penalize you as long as you're doing the work.
Yes. And I think that's it. As long as you're getting the work done. I will say sometimes, especially when I'm dealing with younger students, though, I do tend, my daughter always calls me on this because I've done it to her as well, that I'll say, okay, yes, you may submit it late. Now let's imagine this conversation if I'm your boss. And what would that conversation look like? And I'm being very serious, not snarky. Like, how would you deal with this if you didn't get it done because you had a big game? And how are you going to do that when it's an actual work scenario, and challenge them to think about that a little bit, to think about, like you talked about, their time management, that at some point they're going to have to be very serious about their commitment to their career and their job, where turning work in late is not going to be acceptable. I come from the communications field where there are deadlines sometimes to the second. So I do like to challenge them to think a little bit about what this is going to look like in their career, but at the same time, facilitating them and doing their best work and getting it done.
You mentioned a couple of times about younger students. This is perhaps the first time in their life where they're really having to juggle many things. Their parents usually coordinated things and got them here and there and stuff. So for the first time in their life, they're having to deal with different things, and let's give them a break. It's, they're learning. So I don't want to feel, also, if you don't give somebody extra time to do it, they're going to not do their best work. And you mentioned that also. It'll be much better if I have an extra day to do it. Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm also blessed that I have students from all over the world, and I have a lot of military students. So I was in the military. I'm very sympathetic. It's like, be safe, do what you got to do, and I'll work with you.
All right, we are going to take another short break. And when we come back, George, I want to talk a little bit more about your advice for people that are trying to break into adjuncting or trying to expand their adjunct work. So we'll be back in 30 seconds.
This episode of DigitalEDU Dialogues is brought to you by the BAB Group. The demands for teaching and online learning are constantly evolving. Don't get left behind. Carve out a competitive edge and give students engaging learning experiences with support from the BAB Group's team of course design experts. As experienced online faculty and instructional designers, the BAB Group knows how to craft those aha moments for students and meet outcomes for every modality: online, hybrid, and face-to-face, creating engaging, welcoming, and inclusive learning spaces for students of all ages and abilities has never been more important. Discover how the BAB Group can help you by visiting their website today.
I'm Angela Britcher, and I'm back with George King and our special assistant Mason today. George, let's wrap up by talking about what advice you have for people that are trying to get started as an adjunct or trying to expand their work as an adjunct.
Thanks, Angela. I've been very blessed. I was in the right place at the right time to get my career started, and it's worked out very well. And I was also blessed to find the BAB Group early in my career, which I think has helped me a lot. So I've already mentioned the importance of a professional resume or a professional CV. If you have a master's, you can teach with a master's, although it's getting very, very tough out there to colleges. There's a flood of adjuncts out there. So the more you have in your CV or resume, the better you are, whether it's published works or whatever. But so the first thing I say is start at a local community college. Start in your neighborhood. Community colleges are not looking as much for long-term professors with extensive backgrounds and teaching experience and a lot of publications and everything. So it's a great place to start. I've also mentioned the importance of a professional resume or CV. Resume if you have a master's, CV if you have a PhD. I can't stress enough these. I was just talking to my department chair. Thank you, Mason. Talking to my department chair, Walden, the other day, and there's 4 or 5 openings for a PhD in criminal justice, which is one of the places I teach. And she said in the first day they get 450 CVs came in. 450 in one day applying for 5 positions. So if you have a homemade CV, unless you're a very good writer, chances are you're not going to be considered. Not only does BAB Group do CVs, but they do cover letters. Oh, here's something else I learned about the cover letters. So BAB Group will write you a generic cover letter so you can use it for everyone. And it'll say, I'm applying for an opening at your university. This is something else I learned on the Facebook page for BAB Group, is that when they're looking at it, every time you send one out, go in there and put the name of that university. Don't just leave it at your university. Take the minute to type out your university and put whatever school you're applying to. It makes a difference in your cover letter. So that right off the bat, a statistic I learned from the BAB Group, and I think it holds well, is that you will get an interview perhaps for 1 out of every 200 applications you put in. I know that sounds like a ton, but think about it, folks. If I did, and I used the service, and in 1 year, so it cost me between $3,000 and $4,000 for the service for the year. But I picked up 3 schools. If I pick 2 courses, that's more than paid for itself. So you talk about return on investment. If any of you business majors, or you know what a return on investment is, if you invest in yourself, it's going to pay returns. So I've probably had somewhere 600-700 resumes or CVs out there at one time, or applications. And that really does take, like, talk about balancing a schedule. I don't know how you do all of this stuff, plus spend between 10 and 20 or 30 minutes on each application, where my time is worth a lot to me, where they filled out all these applications for me. So start at the local level, flood the market, make sure you personalize your cover letters that you send out. Try to get good references. Believe it or not, folks, they do call. They do check on your references. I still have my my dissertation chair is one of my references from when I got my PhD. My boss at Indian River State College, him and I have been friends for a long time. He's my department chair. He's great. And then I have a judge that I worked for when I worked in the courthouse, and a circuit court judge makes a great reference. So have good references. They will check. It's worked for me.
Excellent, George.
Oh,
Thank you.
also, one more thing. If you are if you do have some teaching experience, put in your evaluations from your students. I put in many of mine, and that has helped me get sometimes when I've been hired, they've mentioned that they liked what the students had to say about me.
That is another great idea. I'm like, wait, I'm going to do that one too, George. I haven't implemented that one. George, thank you so much for all of your advice and sharing stories about your career. And Mason, thank you for being so sweet and just making us all smile during this very special podcast. So thank you so much for your advice, George. And maybe we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
That would be great, Angela. I hope everybody watching had I guess by the time you see this, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Angela, I wish you and your family a very merry and blessed Christmas, a happy and healthy and prosperous New Year.
Thank you, George.
The Digital EDU Dialogues podcast is brought to you by the Adjunct family of companies.